All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Comic News today. And we got some interesting stories for you today, and we're going to get to those very quickly, of course. But first thing I want to do is introduce to those who are with me. We have Denali, of course. How you doing today, sir?
Doing very well.
Yes. And we are also joined by Dr. Wright. How you feeling today?
I am good. Thank you very much for asking.
Oh, excellent. And I'm nice as well. I have a beautiful sunny day here. I had a cup of coffee, but it's gone now. But a nice cool day. I'm enjoying myself. And we're going to get ourselves into the news. But before we do that, just remember that we have all our links down below. Please go in there and check those out and, become part of what we're doing. The FanSpeak Facebook group and, of course, everything else. And of course, the biggest thing you can do to help us with these lives is not only hitting that like button and the subscribe and notification. Of course, please, if you want to help us out with that, please do that. But the biggest thing actually is hitting that share button. And I'm going to actually do that myself right now and let everybody know that we are on. And I encourage everybody else to do that. Now, before we do get into that, now, Denali, yesterday was a fairly slow news day. What do you feel about today? Is this a better news day?
Mm, just about the same.
Just about the same.
Um, yeah.
Now, we have now, as I said, we have Dr. Wright here, and Dr. Wright, you've been on a couple of our other shows, but why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? We've just been kind of doing what we were talking about. We haven't really talked about who you are and what you do. Why don't you introduce yourself to the folks while I do all the little prep stuff I have to do back here?
Sure, no problem. So, yeah, my nom de plume is Dr. Wright. And what I do is just what it says. I write. I love to, I'm trying to get into Comicsgate. I've got a few projects going on right now between about 3 to 4 different people, sharing a concept with someone. I have something going on with Pixel Trader. He's one of the guys that comes in here too.
Hmm.
And I have a project of my own as well that we're going to be putting out hopefully 3 to 4 books in the next year. We are looking for some artists that want to get in on Comicsgate. So if you got the chops, you got the sequentials, let's go. Give me a holler. Um, Basically, I spent about 12 to 13 years in different editorial. I was mostly kind of behind the scenes in publishing, self-publishing, and that kind of thing. I helped other people. Yeah, I got paid by contract, obviously, usually paid by the word.
Hmm.
And my job was to make sure that it was content edited, not copy edited. I wasn't worried about the grammar, the syntax, or any of that.
Sure.
What I worried about was character development and plot development, narrative design, understanding what conflicts were present, dramatic tension, those kind of things. So if that, I've usually offer help for people that have that kind of question. If they're like, what does my character want? Who is my protagonist? What is this going on? What is what does it mean for a villain to be a hero of their own story?
Hmm.
If you have any of those kind of questions, feel free to ask. Dr. Wright is in on Twitter, and I'll do my best to help you.
Sweet. Excellent. And Denali is over there in the chat and up here as well. But if you could do us a favor, Denali, and throw that link for Dr. Wright up there, and so everyone could go check that out. Really happy to have you with us, by the way, and your insight on the news, sir. So while Denali does that, why don't I just go ahead and bring up today's first bit of news, which is, I don't know, it's the world today. But let's go ahead and talk about it. And here you go. Venom's most disgusting secret revealed by Marvel. Now, this is quite the little article they have going on here, and this is, of course, coming from Screen Rant, which, as you can see, our intrepid Denali, the Denali Lama, of course, Namaste. Uh, goes around the internet and he finds information everywhere he could find it, including places like Screen Rant and Gizmodo and the Mary Sue, which I can't believe that actually came out of my mouth, but it did. And he's found a very interesting story. Now, Denali, please tell us, what is this disgusting secret that they have revealed?
So they kind of give a little background story about Venom and how his mouth and all his stuff works.
Mhm.
And then they go on to some recent events with Eddie Brock. where he's confronted by an evil Richard from the Fantastic Four, Evil Richard.
Mhm.
And what I see or read was kind of interesting. They basically said what does Venom do, or the symbiotes do, when they consume their prey, and they basically say yes, Venom saliva is basically the excrements of the symbiotes. So every time Venom is slobbering on any superhero or anybody,
Uh-huh.
that's actually him excrementing all his stuff on them.
Goodness gracious. Now, do we really need to know that? You see, that's the question, right? Was it necessary that we had to have an understanding that his excrement was all over the place? Does it add something to the story? And you know what, guys? We have Dr. Wright here with us, who is an actual writer. So, Dr. Wright, tell us, does this add something to the story? Is this valuable?
Not really. I mean, I know what they're going for.
Yeah.
What they're trying to associate it with is kind of like because it's a symbiote and these people have the intelligence of a flea, they're comparing it to something like an amoeba, where it kind of has the same. It doesn't have too many openings, and it kind of just excretes itself through its own skin, kind of thing.
Hmm.
But since that's the opening, that's where they're going. And then they're probably also saying that they'll say after a while that, oh, it's also like like a fly, where a fly like actually expels its digestive contents onto something and then slurps it back up. So it's just trying to make it disgusting and give it kind of a shock and awe factor, but it's really stupid and it's a badly written design. I mean, there's no narrative reason for it. There's nothing interesting about it. They're just trying to do, like I said, like shock and awe. Like, look at how gross this is. Yeah. And I don't know, catch like the 12-year-olds. I'm not really sure.
Hey, well, trying to sell a 12-year-olds isn't that bad an idea, but yeah, it just doesn't sound very interesting to me. But hey, let's go ahead and continue on since that pretty much answers it, doesn't it? Now, the next one here,
Pretty much.
yeah, is a little bit more in depth of a conversation, I think. The Simpsons might be quietly removing Apu from the show entirely. Now, Denali, tell us, why would they do that, man?
Because certain people starting that self-identifies as social justice warriors and being PC and all that, says that Apu is a racial stereotype that doesn't represent the better qualities of Indians
Okay.
and those who migrate here. So they brought up a stink storm, and finally they're saying, okay, you know what? We're going to quietly write him out of the show. And they hired this one gentleman to write Apu because he's also Indian American, and
Okay.
because that's all PC and
Because
stuff.
that matters. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now that's interesting you say that he doesn't show the better points of Indian culture, and that actually makes me wonder. He does show Indian culture, which is something Americans never really get to see. So it's something that was introduced to Americans. He's a loyal father, a loyal friend, a successful businessman. Other than it's a comedy show and a farce at that, are those not good qualities? Am I misunderstanding something?
Well, I don't expect them to spend 20 years plus watching the thing. They've probably seen some recent episode and got outraged because.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's just this nonsense PC culture. I mean, in truth, it's the same thing that happened with I don't know if you saw this, Dr. Wright, but we had a little while ago with Scarlett Johansson was going to play a transgender pimp, I guess, whatever, for a movie, and there was a huge outlash from these types, these ultra progressive, crazy people, that like, how dare you? She's not a transgender. Just like they got upset with the girl that's playing Batwoman as she's not lesbian enough, and it's like I don't even understand what that means. But come back to Scarlett Johansson. I mean, what Scarlett did was, oh, I'm sorry, 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 and she got out of it, and now there's no movie at all. So in the same way, what you're doing is ultimately what they're doing is removing one of the only representations of Indians on American TV from American TV. Don't you think that's counterproductive?
Well, what I think is it's a silly sentiment because they're saying, okay, this person doesn't represent, Indian culture. Well, they're not supposed to. They're not an Indian. They're Indian American.
That's right.
They're really American first and Indian second. I mean, if they migrated here, how long have they been here? What kind of? I mean, my grandmother, she died at like 83 years old. She was 100% Japanese. She was born in Okinawa, but you know what? She sounded like a redneck when she died.
Wow.
Okay. Because she grew up in Georgia. She grew up with, my grandfather brought her back, they were in Kingsland, Georgia. They spent, like 60 years together. And that's, what she knew. That was her culture. You know what I mean? She still like knew how to cook some of the foods and that kind of thing. But for the most part, she was American. In fact, she was Southern American. She just happened to have a different color skin and kind of a mishmash of an accent, which was always hilarious to us. But, regardless, like it was, well, we were the only people, it was like Boomhauer. Like we were like 3 people that could understand her, and I was one of them. The prophetic genius. She'd come out and say these words, and everybody'd look at her. You could hear the music, and then we'd say like she wants a sandwich, and everybody'd be like, "Okay, get her a sandwich." And
nobody know what they've been about saying, "Go there."
Very anticlimactic. But who isn't? He's not supposed to be Indian. He was never supposed to be Indian. Was he supposed to be, a bit of satire, a bit of, like sardonic culture? Yeah. I mean, what's next? Are we going to make fun of the robot, the one-eyed Cyclops in Futurama? Oh, hey, future Cyclopses, man. We can't, we got to have them. The whole idea of cultural appropriation is abhorrent and stupid and ignorant. And it completely is counterproductive toward not only culture in general, but progression. Like, it's kind of funny they call themselves progressives, because wouldn't progression mean that we share our cultures and we get the best of both? We work forward to something in unity, something that's beautiful. They had to change the idea of the melting pot. Now we can't say we're a melting pot in schools anymore. We're like, what are we now? Like a salad or something that's easily divisible. You reach in and pick out the tomato instead of it being
salad. No salad,
right?
Yeah, nobody likes salads.
Some sort of homogenous solution. Everybody wants to be their own color with their own delineated railways, that you can't even see the other person. Why? I mean, I want to, like, look at one of the great examples, and I've seen this actually in a Medicare video. Hopefully it doesn't hate everybody for bringing that up, is Baby Metal. The group in Japan have these like these kind of attractive young little anime-ish girls with a lot of energy, a lot of exuberance. And what are they playing in the background? They're playing like like hardcore heavy metal death music. Sounds like, but it's just the chords. What they're actually singing about are things like chocolate.
Exactly. Yeah. Now
it's so awesome.
They're a bit of a meme here in Japan, to be honest with you. But I get your point.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they are.
And that's why we don't call them progressives. We call them regressives, because that's what they are. I think one of the funniest PC cultural appropriation things that gets me is, I could simply turn around and say, well, okay, well, stop speaking my language, right? You're appropriating my language, English. Stop appropriating my genes and my clothing.
And then you could go back to like, stop appropriating, anything Latin of Latin derivation, anything of Cyrillic, anything. I mean, it's so stupid. If you go back, it's like, like some of the things that they say are like, one of the big things with the MAGA maker is they go on and on about how we killed the Indians. And I'm like, you guys realize we were just one of the last land grabs, right? Like that happened throughout culture everywhere.
That's true. And there are plenty Indians around. I don't think we did a good job killing them off, if that's what our plan was. But actually, the one that kills me is the one about dreadlocks. You can't wear dreadlocks, and it's so stupid because do you think that blacks are the only ones that have dreadlocks? I mean, every culture in the world has had dreadlocks at one point or another. It's just so silly. It shows a complete ignorance of anything, of understanding anything. But
well, it was a war culture. It was the thing. It was a way in which you kept your hair so that it was short, and once you did it, it kept it that way for days, and you didn't have to mess with it. You know what I mean? It wasn't in your way, and I mean, so that's all it was. And it was like there's like the malady in New Zealand. They did that. I mean, the Celtics did that. Native Americans. I mean, there's nobody's got, it's like spirit animals. Some SJW went off on Will Wheaton on spirit animals, and I'm like, everybody's had those.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. The
You know,
Japanese still have them.
Yeah.
what do you think? What do you think
Shinto
the Raven
religions right
are,
there.
Odin?
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
Sleipnir, the wolf. What do you think all that was? You think, like,
Yeah.
come on.
Come on.
Yeah.
People read your history. And that's the thing. I don't think they read any history except for what they're told. And then they're like, let me.
They don't read.
True.
They listen. They don't read. They go on Tumblr. They go on the internet and they go, look at this meme, you know, or look at what this person that I believe in said.
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, you know, it goes back to, you know, what is it? The behavior book in 1962 that was written, you know, where they talked about the Nazi, the whole Nazi culture is like a religion.
Yeah.
You know, and they said that they kind of build, you know, Hitler, and then under Hitler they build these sort of lieutenants, these social lieutenants, and whatever
Yeah.
these social lieutenants do, they almost pass off the consequence, you know, or they sort of take on the consequence rather to the people they tell to do them. So like they tell people, you know, go kill this person, and the person's like, okay, because you told me to, it's all right, you know, the perils of obedience. That was the paper that was done. And
Yeah.
you know, the SJWs, they follow that paradigm to a T, which is funny why they call everybody else Nazis, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
And no, I read that paper basically, and they also did a famous test where they had people sit down, and they said, when we tell you, you're going to turn the knob, and what the knob does across on the other room is a person strapped to an electric device, and the knob is
they couldn't see them. Yeah, they couldn't see them.
They couldn't see them at all. So you'll hear my voice through this speaker, and we'll command you to do it. And what they learn is about 97% of the participant would turn the knob because they were ordered to, all the way to deadly, with no disregard.
Yeah, what it went from 0 to I think it was like 50,000 volts.
Yes.
Or 50,000. And what they would do is they would, at every increment, and this was different people. They pulled people from the school, like students. They pulled affluent people, poor people, and it came across. It was the same across the board. It was at least a 67% correlation, which on a go no go is yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
And what that means is that most people, yes, if there is an abnegation of consequence, will do whatever they're told. And what these people, I mean, they would have this person screaming bloody murder on the other side, and the doctor's like, "It's okay, you can keep going."
Wow.
And the guys are like, okay, if you say so.
I know personally I wouldn't do it, but hey, I'm just obstinate. Let me come over here to the chat and say hello and not let them feel like they're so alone. We have Tank Ferret over here. Thank you very much for following us over here, man. And he's got a few things to say. He claims this chat in the name of Pope Rogue. Hail the Emperor. Yes, I agree. Hoth Rebel 86 says Dr. Wright makes great YouTube videos as well. Yes, and Denali has dropped that link in there. We're getting some more praise from you. Greetings, everyone, from Mighty Geek Studios. So greetings to you, sir. We have some other people come in and make some comments. Hoth Rebel 86 says they're turning Venom into a garbage pail kid character. Interesting.
That's a very good comparison, actually, because they were basically, you know, caricatures of certain satirical things, you know, of certain like really gross ideas, and it's true. It's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah,
it's a very good.
Absolutely. Mighty Geek says that Apu is a staple in The Simpsons. Yes, he was. Hoth Rebel says Apu has taught me so much about Indian culture that I would have never found out on my own. Yep, exactly. But no more. It is gone. Hello, Primax Sanguinius. He says, R.I.P. or rest in peace, Apu. The Simpsons just got a whole lot whiter. That's another point, I guess. But those of us over here, we don't really think about that. Primark also says that self-awareness seems to be a rare commodity in today's society. I would agree. Mighty Geek Studio says that NPCs don't read because if they did, they would realize that they are the very thing they hate. Irony. Isn't that the definition of irony, Dr. Wright?
No, but it's close.
Thank you.
It is
I wanted
dramatic
a more
irony.
emphatic no, you idiot. But,
oh no!
I set
dramatic
you up, man. That was like a layup.
It's more or less the easiest way to describe it is dramatic irony is when the audience or the reader knows something that the players, you know, or the characters within it don't. and that's usually the sense of dramatic irony. But in this case, I mean, I understand what they're saying. Usually, when it's like the old song, it's like rain on your wedding day. It's like, no, that's not irony. That's a coincidence. But thank you.
Yes, it's a coincidence, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's all right. A lot of people don't understand the actual how to use irony correctly. But in a way, what it has done, like many of these other things we're talking about, the word irony has become culturally changed. It is used to talk about coincidence or things that are oddly connected or what have you. And it's not the correct use, but it's the way it's been used, and it's changed. See, culture changes when we interact with each other. You see, when we take things like Mexican food, and then the cowboys take that and they turn it into an American version of it, and then we get Tex-Mex, right? And everyone goes around and says, "Oh, this is great Mexican food, and you shouldn't do it because you're not Mexican. How dare you make it like that thing that happened over in Portland?" And it's like, no, you do realize that these things that you are claiming to be Mexican aren't actually Mexican at all. They're Tex-Mex, like pizza from Italy. It's not what pizza looks like. Your idea of pizza is not what it started out to be. It was more like a tomato casserole, right?
Right.
This my point I'm trying to make here, as insubtly as I am, is that cultural appropriation is a good thing. So
Yeah. Cultural drift,
yeah, well, you can call it
basically.
whatever you want.
Yeah. But yeah, speaking from an English teacher, which that's what you are,
Yes.
we should take back the word irony to the original meaning and kind of have that dramatic players. And the thing about with these individuals, which people are saying NPC or SJW or whatever they self-identify as or whatever, they have to be a dramatic player, and they're not. They're just following the leader, and they're not realizing that. So there's no sense of irony, no dramatic irony, because there's no players, even though we see them just marching off the cliff because
Sure.
they don't care.
Yeah, but Hothray Rebel 86 makes a very good point. Irony makes my dress shirts look nice. Ha ha! That's a dad
Ba
joke, dude.
ba ba da.
That is absolutely a good dad joke. Model 3 is here. Very good. I'm glad to see you, dude. I really love that 3D model you did the other day. I want to see more of that, dude. Good evening, all, he says. Thank you. Mighty Geek Studio says, in Italy, pizza was a way to serve leftovers originally. Yep. A lot of foods is that way. It's just a way for you to use what you got left over. Stews and all that kind of stuff is just a way to take the food you have and to make it edible and useful to at the time. Absolutely. And of course, if you
Definitely.
go to Italy today and you order pizza, you know what you get? You get American pizza. How nice that is. See, things go back and forth, don't they? Like you go over
Yep.
to America and you get sushi. It's not what the Japanese would call sushi, but you know what? The California roll can be found in Japan today. Amazing, right?
I still
Right.
remember being in Paris for a job,
Mhm.
and they put an egg in the middle of my pizza.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
And I was
people,
like, "What? Why do you do this?"
well, see, that's the cool thing about cultural exchange is the fact that you get all these cool things come out of it because one culture will say, "Hey, that's cool," and then they'll add something to it and make it better. Once again, using a Japanese reference because I'm over here, they have a lot of great foods that they have taken from Western people and said, "Well, how can we do it?" And it gets you things like chicken namban and jidori and a whole bunch of other things. They've got, a lot of meat things because something that a lot of foreigners might not understand is that before the Meiji Restoration that took place here in Japan, Japanese didn't eat meat. It was against their religion. They ate some bird, and they actually it's kind of cute. When you count things here in Japan, depending what the thing is, you use a different word. Uh, so, for instance, if you're talking about some kind of roundest object, you might say ko, or if you talk about a flat thing, you might say mai. But if you're talking about a bird, where if you talk about like a cat or a dog or a normal animal, you would just use like piki was the word they use, non-picky, how san-picky, like three of them. But if you're talking about birds, you would use one, like san one, three birds, right? but they also
Hmm.
used it with rabbit. They count rabbit as San Juan, and the reason they did it was because they really like to eat rabbit, and they tried to find a way around it. So they kind of cheated the system and saying, "Oh, the rabbit's got long ears. That's counted as Juan. We can eat that." I thought that was really cool. But I mean, once again, cultural sharing and cultural growth is a good thing. But we do need to move on to the next story. But we could talk all day about examples of that, and it's just such a nonsense. I don't understand these people, but whatever. I never will. Now, Denali, we have Michael Rooker. Marvel firing James Gunn is terrible, but he has Suicide Squad. Tell us about this, sir.
So they cut up with him, the interview, J.K. Schmidt, at Walker Stalker convention in Atlanta. And he says, yeah, it's terrible that Gunn was fired, but he has Suicide Squad because he's writing and directing it. And that struck to me because we only have confirmation that he's only writing the movie, not directing the movie.
Yeah.
And we all know that Michael Rooker is a longtime collaborator with James Gunn. So maybe that's a oops moment from Mr. Rooker, where he released the news before it could be official.
Maybe.
And we may be seeing James Gunn behind the helm as well.
And of course, this news is not the interesting news. What the interesting news is that James Gunn is still working. Do you have any opinions on that, Dr. Wright, as far as the whole James Gunn incident? What do you think about that, man?
I think it's a little bit hypocritical. I think WB's kind of stepping in it here. I mean, you're basically making an enemy of Disney, which I think, I mean, what do they own? Like 37% of all the national entertainment media now, or international entertainment media. I mean, they've got China they have China when nobody else does, really. They've got trying to move into Japan and, other sectors. And I mean, I just think that's a bad move. I wouldn't have done it personally, but I mean, I do see what they see, which is, $800,000 a movie, great everything. But I mean, then he was also pushed by the Disney machine that was already kind of pre-created. Like, it was already, you know what I mean? I mean, it started with Iron Man. It was already up and going by that time.
That's right.
With the whole Marvel thing. So like, what is he going to have now? Suicide Squad was not a good movie. It was not widely accepted. It was horrible. It was horrific.
It was poorly written, poorly directed, and poorly edited. It failed on three counts.
Yeah, the acting wasn't horrible. That's true. But no, it's the thing with James Gunn. It's a very unfortunate that it came out, and yes, I most certainly do agree that Primarch Sanguinis, the things he said were really bad in those old tweets. But the thing that comes up with it for me is the James Gunn is actually a very talented person. He's very skilled at what he does, and it is an unfortunate loss. So part of me is like, yeah, I'm happy to see him working again, and the other part of me is like, ooh,
Well, he'll have the stigma of why he got fired in any future projects. So, and he has to produce, he has to make this a hit. They're willing to give him a chance, but probably the condition is you have to make at least this much money on this movie. And if not, you're going to have a harder time working.
No, that's absolutely
because remember, he was going to announce a project with Sony in San Diego Comic-Con when the news broke out, about the whole tweets that he made. Mm-hmm. He deleted them, and then he apologized for it, and then the next day he got fired. Yeah. And after that, we haven't heard anything about that horror Sony project he was working on. It kind of went radio silence. So either, go ahead.
No, it's all very unfortunate.
Yeah. So, and just because we can't accept James Gunn, we also have to be cognizant that, there's a lot of people under James Gunn that were looking for that work. For when you hold a production of a movie, it's a writer, then you're causing about hundreds where they're going to be filming at, a loss of revenue, loss of jobs, loss of income. And, and that's really the unfortunate part because, the carelessness of his action caused other people to suffer, not just himself only.
True, true. And unless you want to have anything to add to this, Dr. Wright, I'm going to move it along and to the next story. Anything to add?
No, I mean, I don't personally agree that people should be fired for what they say on Twitter or anyone else.
Hmm.
I actually believe that people should be able to say whatever they want and judged only on the merit of the work. However, in the case of this particular instance, I also know that Disney is first and foremost a medium of child's entertainment and education, and you cannot have pedophilia and children in the same circle.
Yes.
Correct. And that was the number one reason why they fired him. To remember, Disney is a family friendly company. That's what they do. That's what they market their in-house indoors
Absolutely.
brand and theme parks.
Yeah.
And now everybody, when they're going to the theme parks and everything, will see, they'll probably be phasing that slowly out for the time being.
Oh, sure. And if it had been any other subject matter, he would not have been fired. But, it is what it is. So, moving on. Wolverine debuts his new comic book superpower. Now, that sounds exciting. Or maybe not. I don't really know if Wolverine needs any new superpowers, but hey, he's got one. So Denali, tell us, what is this amazing thing that is happening with Wolverine? It must be awesome.
His claws light up and glow really hot.
Okay. Why?
Hey, lightsaber, because he came and it's Wolverine with lightsaber claws that he doesn't have fully. It happens occasionally.
Okay, thank
Because
you,
it's a
Denali.
Disney.
Denali's
Okay.
been working on his sound effects. Let's go. Let's clap. Come on, Dr. Riley. Let's clap. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Keep that up. But all right. So basically, now I saw a little bit of this earlier before. This is the first time I've seen this. But yeah, I don't know, Dr. Wright. Do you have any opinion on burning claws in Wolverine, which doesn't really seem to make any sense, and they haven't really explained why at all?
It's just stupid. I mean, I hate to put it that simply, but he was cool enough. He's always been an interesting character, and the thing that makes characters more interesting is that they have more challenges, not less. So by doing this, you're going to give him even more ability. Like, I mean, I think it describes in one of the articles like he sparks the gasoline, which is just dumb because that's not even how that would work. It's
No.
not the gasoline that ignites. It's depends on the vapor density, how thin it is, and it would ignite what's above it, not the gasoline. And then it's just, yeah, I mean, I don't know. All of it is just silly. It seems like it's almost like, we used to say corny things were comic booky, and then comic books became interesting and, interesting and insightful commentaries into our time and our history. And now they're becoming caricatures. They're turning them into absolute caricatures. They're just jokes to sick, semi-circular, tracked, seminal track jokes. And it's horrible. It's really offensive. Sorry, I know this is a rant, but that's just what I think.
It's a lot of postmodernism structures that's going on, where before it was used with subtlety and had poignancy. Now it's just like, as you said, Dr. Wright, just a joke and hollowness. It's like, this is so funny. Just to me, they won't get it because I'm too smart for them. Kind of
Oh
deal.
my. Interesting. Well, I don't really have much to say about it, other than the fact that adding something to a character can be cool if it makes sense. But Wolverine is so well established, I just don't think he needs anything like that. And and you need to think it out a little bit. And I think what you guys have touched on is something I've noticed. You go back and read some of the old books written by some actually quite clever writers. You see them not only tie these stories in that come together over an arc of many, many, many issues, but you also see them go out and do some work and some research to try to make it as believable as possible. Now, talking about comic book, just like science fiction or anything else, there is a certain bit of, you have to suspend your disbelief. I mean, it is something that needs to be done, but we want to keep that to an absolute minimum as possible. We want it to be as believable as possible because that way it's more fun. And the problem I think that I'm seeing overall with a lot of these writers that new writers that have come in from Marvel and DC is they do not do the research. They don't go out and do the legwork. They just write things, and sometimes it looks like a single draft, which Dr. Wright could certainly say. I mean, I've written quite a bit of things myself as well, but I'm not at the level he is. But you don't do that. You do your research, you collect the evidence, then you put it together, and you write it, and then you rewrite it again, then you rewrite it again, and then you rewrite it again. That's how you do it until it's smooth. That's how you write. And it looks to me, Dr. Wright, that they're not doing this at all. Now, I'm not really focusing on the Wolverine thing here particularly. I'm talking about overall, especially with Marvel. They just don't seem to be doing the research at all, man. What do you think?
I think it's worse than that. I think when I write something, I mean, you kind of hit on some of the subjects there. When I write something, the first thing I do is research whatever I'm writing.
Mm,
I mean, my father, when I was young, he was like, I want to take you to the club. He was talking about the gun range and everything, and they also did archery. And he's like, I want to take you out there and buy you a compound bow. And the first thing that I did was begin to learn about physics and linear acceleration.
mhm,
That's just the kind of person I am, and I've always been that way. I want to find out, what's underneath, what makes this work, what makes this connect, and what's the connective tissue, the subtext, everything else that makes this actually be what it is. And they don't go into that. What they end up having is a fundamental lack of understanding. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of what is actual narrative design, what people actually want, and why. The only reason why you would create a new ability, okay, or that I would ever do something, is if there was a fundamental change within his physical, impetus. If there was an actual manifestation of something that changed to him, like
mhm.
maybe, he is a mutant, right? So
Yep.
if he had gone under, some great thing, maybe he was in there and he actually couldn't die. And being that it was in there, his body created something that could get out, and that was just turning his healing factor into heat, representative on the claws. Okay, I can roll with that. I can ride with that. You know what I mean? But show me. Don't tell me. Don't show me like claws that are just red and sparking gasoline and this kind of silly thing. Give me a narrative reason. Let me understand the complexities of the character, because that's what's going to pull me in. We want something that's relatable, right? I mean, those are the kind of stories that you really get into, or the story, or the characters that you trust, or that you believe in, that you want to be almost,
Mhm.
because we get immersed in things that we can either relate to or understand. I mean, you look at the basic conflicts, the 6 basic conflicts. Actually, I'm I'm going to write a blog about this week, and I may do a video if there's interest. But
Mhm.
there 6 basic conflicts. It used to be 7, but people, Christianity and supernatural, they just kind of combined. People don't like that whole God thing. But there were 6 basic conflicts, and those conflicts are the engine that drive dramatic tension. All right, and if you don't have one of those conflicts, you don't have a story. Okay. And there's no conflict with this claw. Why are we seeing it? And that's what I'm getting at. Is like, if there's no conflict, there's no tension, there's no reason. Take it out. If it doesn't develop a character, it's not
Yep.
action, or it doesn't advance the plot, remove it.
Absolutely. That's like 101 with writing. If it doesn't move the plot along, don't put it in there. That's the simplest, most basic thing you do as a writer. And like I said, that's a very good point. But I also think it's the research. I mean, it's not hard, especially these days, with this absolutely amazing, miracle, magical thing we have called the internet, where you can research literally any topic you could ever imagine. I mean, wow, look, I mean, when I was younger, we didn't have this internet thing. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any of that stuff. We had a phone on the wall. You go up and you goes around and it goes dut, 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 dut. I mean, that's what we had. And if we were going to write something, we had to go to the library. We had to it take days or weeks to research anything. You can go do that same research in an hour now, and they're not bothering to do it. It's laziness, is what it is. It's straight up laziness, and this nonsense of hiring the person because they're the right color, or the right ethnicity, or the right gender, or the right sex, or whatever, or preference of sex. It's just nonsense. You hire the person who can do the job, and if that person happens to match the character you have, great, awesome. That has nothing to do with it. You hire the person who can do the writing, and that's the problem we've seen is this absolute degradation to the art of writing. And comic book writing in particular is a very far more difficult than you might think it is, because if you're writing a novel, you have 300, 400 pages to tell your story. In a comic book, you got what, 25, 24, and you tell it with the art, and then the writing has to be something that adds and lifts it, and has to be done over a series. It's not easy, and you need people who are skilled at it. That's not much of a rant, but it is certainly an opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the next story. And this one I was going to do some Indicron today, but I don't think we will, because I think this is a good point that Denali has brought up. And I'm going to go ahead and read through this. And as I read, Denali and Dr. Wright are going to interject, and they're going to give their opinions. And I think Denali, particularly, his job involves working with psychology and stuff. This is something he knows quite a bit about. I believe he has a degree, actually.
Correct.
Yeah. So he's found an interesting little correlation. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it, and you guys interject as you like. And the article here is how narcissism plays the victim and twist the story. Play the victim and twist the story. So people with strong narcissism tendencies are known for certain destructive social patterns. Anybody who has had the misfortune of dealing with these types of people may notice that whenever there's conflict or any type of disagreement, they tend to act in an abhorrent yet predictable manner. In this article, we will explore the common behaviors and scenarios where narcissism and otherwise toxic people, hereafter narcissists, play the victim and manipulate the narrative. Delusion and denial. Narcissists can deal with reality because it can't deal with reality because it contradicts what they want to be true. And this creates painful emotions. As a coping mechanism, they learn to delude themselves that what is real is actually not real. And however they see the situation is real, even though it isn't. Sometimes they truly see it that way. Other times it's just a story they tell themselves and others. And often the longer you tell a story, the more you believe it, even if initially you know it's not true. And so eventually they may start truly believing it. Either way, the first step is to create a version of events that is an alternative to what actually happened or what's going on. Delusion and denial.
Yes. So we see that already. We saw it with, playing with the politics, where the left rejected the reality that Donald Trump was elected. And they say that it's Russian interference, it's, voter fraud, it's whatever. We see that delusion in the comic book industry as well, when, they said with EVS and others that you're not going to make any money off of this. You're not going to do any success. There's not going to be any things. You're going to be a blip and be gone. And they deny the whole thing. When we criticize their work, they can't face that reality of, that our realities are valid, because that would contradict whatever mentality or whatever they have. And a lot of these people deal with self-depression, low self-esteem, gender confusion, and other mental health that are been apparent. Would you not agree, Dr. Wright? Currently in the comic industry and other creators?
I would say this is indicative of the movement as a whole. Mm-hmm. This is postmodernism on it. Basically just, postmodernism given some, some verbiage because more or less what this is saying is that, when you can't deal with reality, you create your own, which, yeah, absolutely. And the unfortunate aspect about that is that's the reason why they're attacking entertainment, is because a lot of these people, and that's why, I've gone back and I've talked about in some of my videos where we used to love some of these people. You know what I mean? We used to share the tables with them at comic book conventions like 15, 20 years ago, before all this was a big deal, when we were just kind of growing up. Everybody, we might have made fun of the vampire guys crossing their arms, saying they were invisible when everybody could see them, but we still loved them, right?
Yeah, sure.
There was still love, right? It was all in jest. If they really got upset about it, we'd say, I'm sorry. we not like, the Canadian way where, like, we apologize for someone else punching us, but the regular way.
Sorry.
But sorry, any Canadians out there, but uh, we loved each other, you know what I mean, in our own way. Like, we respected each other, and then that became an animosity when everybody decided that, okay, well, I learned from this, and so my kids should learn from this. And honestly, it's sort of like, I mean, I hate to get, like, too sociological and everything into it and the cultural, but if you look at like the millennials and how they, they kind of embraced, well, I should be able to be anything. And and there's the whole thing about, I mean, there's all kinds of dissertations about how the millennials have ruined a lot of things, and they're like, entitled, and no, not every prize is first prize, and all this other kind of stuff. Well, you take those people, guess what? These are their kids.
Exactly. You raise them on these still.
Yeah, so these people, these apostomatically inclined people, apostomatism is the like the warning configurations of nature, like, weird colors and smells and that kind of thing. Anyway,
Sure.
But these apostomatically inclined people, and these, in sort of like how they're dealing, the bi-centered he, him, she, zer, ziz, podikin, are because they were told by their parents they could be anything they wanted, and they were given no reign, they were given no controls. They didn't tell them, like, look, you've got to deal with reality, you can't just keep running away from it. So instead of, like, escaping to that game, they jumped inside of it. They're playing Black Ops. They're not, you know what I mean? Like, their world is Black Ops. They're not playing it anymore. And so when they run into a situation they can't handle, instead of dealing with that reality, what they instead do is look for a cheat code.
Yeah. No.
And their cheat code is being in the regressive liberal movement and having other people that want cheat codes too, to life. I'm not one to overlook a good cheat code. I mean, if I don't want to deal with it, if I just want to read the story in the game or something to that effect, you know what I mean? But in the world, I've found that it's better to deal with what's in front of me. And I think it makes a better person. And, like, in a narrative, in a story, it makes a better story. I mean, would you want a character? Hey, oh, well, Ray. I actually have a photo that I had created for my blog, which is basically the failure of Ray in the man versus self conflict, in Star Wars, in The Last Jedi. I mean, she goes down there to face herself, right? To face her worst fears, herself. What does she see? Just herself, nothing else. Like, she's so boring, the dark side doesn't even want anything to do with her. What does that say?
Yeah, and keep in mind, everyone, we're talking about, in a way, how to identify narcissism. And the first one here is delusion and denial. But let me move on to the second one, and you guys can continue
I do
the
have
conversation.
one other point. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I can totally see why Denali would come up with this, because his last thing is always, you create your own reality. Well, guess what? Here you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. And just my little 2 cents on that is delusion is a very bad thing. Imagination is a wonderful thing. Lying. While delusion is more of an internal process, lying and denial is often in the context of other people. Regular people deal with their problems by themselves, internally, or they discuss it in a very private setting, in therapy or among very close, healthy people. Narcissists don't have people like that in their life and are not really interested in actually resolving anything or being introspective. Narcissists simply want to know that they are in the right. For that, they need other people's false validation and to regulate the shaky self-esteem, their shaky self-esteem. They need to find people who would agree with them. And in order for others to agree with them, these other people either need to be terribly unhealthy or unable to recognize their own toxic tendencies. Or the narcissists need to lie and present a different story than what is actually true. Here, they tend to flip the roles where they are good, noble, caring, virtuous, and other people are the other person is evil, cruel, selfish, and immoral. Which brings us to the next point, which I will wait on. But boy, I'm starting to see a picture I have recognized very closely for the past few years.
Absolutely. And we see it most of us have seen it a lot on Twitter, where a lot of the narcissism happens to get on Twitter and post a lot of things. And we have seen it concentrated in the comic book industry with the creators, where they are projecting image, and if you don't agree with the image, they will run away from it. They don't want to deal with the criticism. They don't want to deal with the introspection. They don't want to face the reality, and they lie about it, that it's everybody's fault except my own. It's everybody's problem except my own. And if you don't agree with me, then you're part of the problem, and you are the problem.
Hmm. Yep. Very good. All right, let me just keep reading. I'm sure Dr. Ray has an opinion. Well, let me add this to that opinion since we are getting tight on time. Projection. The most common way narcissists create alternative narratives is by projecting. We've talked about narcissistic projection in a separate article, but to extract the main point, narcissists love to project. Yes, they do. If they say that the other person is jealous of them, then you know that the narcissist is jealous. If they say the other person was cruel to them, then you know that the narcissist was cruel to the other person. If they say that the other person was lying and cheating, then you know that they were the one lying and cheating. Yes, sometimes it's not as simple as there could be unhealthy behavior on both sides, but more often than not, whatever the narcissist is presenting the other person as is as much more accurate description of the narcissist. Whenever the case may be, the mechanism here is that in the narcissist's mind, they try to attribute their own unhealthy behavior, perspective, and character traits to the other person because it shifts attention and responsibility from them. And in the other person, and if the other person is all these bad things, then it can't be that I am these things, thinks the narcissist. I'm the good guy here. Hmm, boy.
Absolutely. And I don't think I need to really put in depth of how a lot of projection is going on. You can't do this. This will fail. You are bigots. You are racist. You are all these things. You are Nazis. But we keep talking about it, and we keep being introspective and unpackaging. And a pattern is starting to emerge that a lot
Yes.
of people are starting to recognize.
Mm. Dr. Wright?
Frame the story. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, it's just that, I mean, I hate to keep going back to that. I sound like Jordan Peterson sometimes, but it is postmodern thought. It's the concept that we're deconstructing everything around us. We reconstruct it in our image, and by doing so, you're limiting everything around you to only what you can do. I remember seeing and I remember disliking. I used to go to this website, comicbookmovie.com. I used to love it. It's horrible now because the only thing that people do is argue, you know. And I remember seeing the kind of the beginnings, the genesis of that was way back in under the movie Batman Begins, you know. And Nolan is kind of big on deconstruction, but he limits it. He's got a balance, okay. And it's, he tries to, straddle that balance, and he does an okay job in most movies. For Batman Begins, to me, was the best of the Batman movies, in my opinion, because it felt like a comic book. The rest of them didn't feel like a comic book. They just felt like a noir drama somehow associated with Batman. But that one, what I kind of enjoyed about it, was that it was simple. It was a simple story, but it was interesting, and we got into the characters, which, I mean, that's really all we need in a great story and a great show. But in this case, one of the the elements that it keeps going against is, like I said, these people kept saying things like, well, I can't do that kick. I couldn't lift that guy up. I couldn't do this. So therefore he can't.
Right. Yeah.
And you just limit yourself. There's no imagination. It's the same thing, like cultural appropriation. Well, I'm not Indonesian, so that, that other person shouldn't be able to. And it's all these things. It's like, you should only be able to do what you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's why, in my opinion, they love politics, because politics is basically like superheroism in their world, because it's something anyone can do that affects everybody.
Well, something I've learned, because I've traveled all over the world, man, and I've met cultures from all over the world. I've learned their languages. I've spoken with them, interacted with them. And the one thing I've learned, the one truth that I have found throughout all my travels, people are people. It doesn't matter where you're from. We're not hardly different at all. We're literally not that different. I mean, we have some small cultural differences, but they are small. People are the same. You go to China, you go to Mexico City, you go to Germany, wherever you go, they're not different. They're just like you. So having someone that saying that, oh, you're not from Indonesia, so you can't write what an Indonesian would know, it's nonsense. An Indonesian knows and thinks and feels just like you do. We're human. That's all you need
So
to
what
know.
did you post the lyrics to Depeche Mode? People are people, because that's
Yes,
exactly what it's about. Just
exactly.
saying.
Yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
let me read the next two sections, and then you guys can comment again. Framing the story. Narcissists also like to truncate the story and present only the bit where the aggressive party reacted to their toxic behavior. Framing is as if that's where the story started. And there's a picture over here that has a guy on a camera, and there's a narcissist chasing someone with a knife, and the victim is running away. Or they twist it by using euphemisms and deceiving language. Example: I'm not controlling, I just want what's best for you. For example, if a narcissist dislikes you and tries to bully you, but you stand up for yourself, then they will frame it as if they are the one being a victim of the bullying. In their narrative, they were just doing the thing or joking around, and you started being mean to them. Meanwhile, they simply left out what happened beforehand when they bullied you. So actually, you being mean to them is a normal response to toxic behavior. Here, by leaving out or downplaying their aggression, they simply frame you engaging in self-defense as vile aggression against them, and then they think, "How dare you react or challenge me? You're so sensitive and unfair. That's why you deserve everything that's coming." Slander, triangulation, character assassination. There are several ways how the narcissist employs their lies and projection. And the goal is always to turn others against you in a hope that they won't try to figure out the truth. One of the ways to do this is triangulation. In psychology, it means controlling and manipulating communication between two parties. It is related to gossiping, smearing, and slandering, where the narcissist spreads false information around. A more extreme version of all of that is character assassination, where the lies are much more severe and damaging. Now, this is definitely something we see going on all the time, guys. Go ahead, Denali.
So let me read something from a Bleeding Cool about Richard Meyer, and it's actually something that Mark Wade wrote. I have called into Antarctic Press. Until I hear back, I'm hesitantly willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that they don't really understand who or what they're getting into business with, which, though it may seem a stretch, is a possibility. If I do hear back, I'll report in. Curious as to how they feel about publishing creator whose marketing strategy is allegedly encourage the fans to threaten the employees of stores and or harass and one-star review bomb stores that don't order their products. Are we as creator responsible for the actions of our fans? Ultimately, of course not, but it's morally bankrupt, and it continues on. But when does that not kind of fit the definitions that you've just been reading?
Absolutely. And speaking of the devil,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, narcissism is the absolute perfect term for what's going on. And everything we just read through, which is a psychological look at how to identify narcissism, applies perfectly. Not not 50%, not 70%, 100% of it applies perfectly to what we see going on all the time. And Mark Wade is a straight up example of that. So I guess Mark Wade is a narcissist.
Correct. Because if you scroll down a little bit, Chester, and we look at what he's telling everybody why he's getting sued. It doesn't mention anything about it. He only mentioned that he's standing up for the rights of women, small minority, the LGBTQ plus community. But he doesn't mention that he made a call to Antarctic Press.
No, it doesn't.
Stopping the eight. He doesn't talk about, why he's being sued for defamation or anything like that. He only talks about, look at this. I'm the victim. I'm standing against these bigots, projecting,
Yeah, no,
delusion, lying.
It's a mirror. It's
manipulation.
a mirror of what we just read. Absolutely,
Yeah.
it's perfect. It lines it up exactly 100%. That's what I said.
And then these people who are paying him, for these are actual enablers who either are, based on the article we read, are Toxis himself, giving false positive validations,
Mhm.
and supporting his delusion by supporting him with this GoFundMe.
Wow. Now that does wrap it right up quite nicely, Dr. Wright. You have any opinions here as we're getting ready to close out the show? But thank you very much for bringing that article, Janelli. I think it's a
Mhm.
very serious thing. There's no real joking around going on there, but it does give us a straight up view of what we've been seeing on the other side. If you weren't able to put it into a single word, now you can. They're narcissists. Why don't you go ahead and give us your comment on that, Dr. Wright?
Well, I mean, I think it's mostly done, but I would say that, like I said in the chat, the unfortunate part about it is it's like a disease in that it's infectious. I mean, people, everybody wants to be somebody. Like once you have one snowflake, well, they talk to somebody, they're like, yeah, but you could be awesome too. You could be in my world, and then I could be part in your world, and we could both be awesome. And who doesn't want to be awesome? Who doesn't want to be, liked or whatever it is, or accepted, in some way? And so it's like an infectious disease. But the problem is it's like we're all like a tapestry. We're intertwined, and whatever you do and you bring into my life affects me, and vice versa. And so when they come in there and they do that, they're wrecking people's lives and they don't care about it. You know what I mean? They're completely changing their existence, not for the better. It's in detriment to society as a whole. I mean, I just like the entire regressive movement.
So let me add this because it goes with the idea about it. As a result, sometimes people get hurt socially, financially, emotionally, and even physically. But the narcissism doesn't care about that. In fact, they are often glad because in their narrative, the victim deserved it by being evil. So whatever happened is justified. So, and even in their mind, they feel like whatever they've done is justified. That's why Mark Wade and others are adamant about they're doing the right thing because in their eyes they're justified to the perceived evils that they see happening, and they're projecting their own insecurities, their own um, bias, their own bigotous. Everything that they're calling us is actually a projection from them, and you have to just call it out when it is and say, "Sorry, I'm not going to validate your narcissism. Please seek help." And do
Exactly.
that because if enough people do it, they cannot turn away from it, and most likely or not, you'll either be uh, chain blocked or they will ignore you and call it harassment. They're not willing to deal with it, but you just have to say, "Hey, I see what you're doing. You're a narcissism. Go get help because you're not getting any validation from me," and just walk away.
And of course, the media is encouraging and strengthening their positions and just enabling them, really. So that's why it's not getting better, it's getting worse. But anyway, thank you very much, Denali Lama. Namaste. Very insightful look at what the narcissist is, and for anyone who is listening, you can see very clearly this is what we're seeing out of these progressive so-called SJWs. That's exactly what they are. And it's an unfortunate thing because it's affecting our whole world, not just our world, that is comic books, but everything. And it's a problem that needs to be solved in some way or another, and I'm curious to see how that's going to work out in the future. But anyway, thank you all very much for coming and joining us for the news today. That was a lot of fun. Some interesting articles, and we're going to come back to you every day and do that. Just keep in mind that 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, there's always something going on over here. We're doing the news. We're doing Bugbear's Basement on Tuesdays. We have Fan Speak on Fridays, of course. We do the Joint and Quartered sometimes as it rotates around, but I'm always emceeing that, so please come check that out. It's a lot of fun doing the fan edition of that. Check out all our links, support us. Remember that art contest is going on. We had a great stream earlier with some great artists doing their FanSpeak logo and mascots to present it to everyone. Get yours in too. Be part of it. Just go ahead to the FanSpeak Facebook group, join us, and you'll see that announcement right at the top from Denali, and you'll be able to drop your submission in there. So thank you all very much, and I'm going to go around here and get any contact information you may have. Go ahead, Denali, tell them where they can find you, sir.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Denali101. And you can shoot me a DM or tweet at me, and I'll usually reply. I'm also on FanSpeak group page on Facebook. I'm always posting in news and checking out the webpage. If you have any questions or anything, hit us up there as well. And for a little bit of homework, we are doing the over and underrated on Tuesday in the basement, and the book and issue that we're going to be reading is going to be Animal Man issue 5 by Grant Morrison. So for those who are going to join us that day, read up on that issues, because we want to hear what you say, and come join the fun.
Absolutely, man. Dr. Wright, tell everyone where we can find you and all your goodness, sir.
Well, I'm at Dr. Wright is in on Twitter, and from there you can find me on my YouTube. I'm also a FanSpeak member, so feel free to reach out to me there if you would like. And that's pretty much. Oh, and I have a blog site that I need to work at keeping up more regularly. It is co8r.com. That's Chronicles of 8 Realms.com. So feel free to come there and drop me a comment on any blogs that you see.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and of course, a big thank you to all of those that are sitting here and watching us and sharing with us in the chat and just watching from home. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you guys joining us and being part of what we're doing. So we will see you all tomorrow, of course, and that's it. That's a wrap. Later, everybody.
Aloha.